just don't know.
Hey friend, in today's video I will be starting a new series, the console case, where basically I discuss different things that usually only apply to console, and I compare and contrast and try and give you the best option to run on a gun or an operator or something like that. Getting right into it, the first one I'm going to be doing is the Holo versus Acog case. Both of them are really good valid optics, but I'm going to be stating what I believe to be better sight for a more rounded, basically for more situations, the best well-rounded sight. Getting into it, the reason why I'm talking about the Holo is simply because it's the most common. The reflex and the red dot are good, and sometimes the iron sights are really good. I'm just going to be discussing the Holo because it has the smallest reticle in the middle, and you can run it on basically every single gun. It doesn't have a boxy housing, and it's arguably the best of the one-time sight. Anyways, I'm going to now compare them between. One of the basic things is the consistency you get of the Holo that you don't get from the Acog. Like I just mentioned, you can run the Holo on every single gun, but you can't really do that with the Acog because of balance reasons that I will actually discuss a little bit later that I found was pretty interesting in my time playing this game. And one of the advantages of the Holo is simply, you have, because it's not as zoomed in, you're not processing the recoil as much. You're not seeing it as much as you with the Acog. It's the equal amount, but you're just seeing it less. And also, you have a wider field of view. On console, your default field of view is 60, which is pretty narrow, actually. Your IRL field of view, I guess, with your actual eyes is 120 degrees. So you're seeing a lot less, but it's a lot more focused in Rainbow. It's a lot more zoomed in. It's a lot more clear because. So when you aim down sights with any of your one-time sights, your field of view gets zoomed in 0.9%, which basically makes it your field of view become 54. But as opposed to when you zoom in with your Acog, and that makes it 21 because it zooms it in significantly and your peripheral seems to go away. So that does give the advantage to the Holo because you have a wider field of view, meaning if you have to fight multiple enemies who aren't super close together, with the Holo, it's easier to bounce from one to the other because you can still see both of them. You can still see both of them, most likely, unless your peripheral. But the chances of you seeing that with your Acog is a lot lower. So you have those advantages for the Holo, less visual recoil, and also when you're moving or when your enemy's moving, it's because it's not as zoomed in as the Acog, it's not going to be as obvious to you. So that's the advantage of the Holo, and recoil, which I mentioned. So the advantage for the Acog is going to obviously be you being zoomed in. You being zoomed in means it's just simply, I apologize if you can hear that, it's simply easy if you can see them more clear. It's easier to hit your initial shot. Once they start strafing, that becomes less and less of the case, especially if you have a sprinting 3-speed. Oftentimes it can be really difficult to fight them if they're super close, because then they're just in and out of your field of view really quickly. If you can land one of your first few shots, it's going to significantly aid you because you're zoomed in going for headshots. And so far, they don't have any helmeted operators except technically for Blackbeard. So going for the head is still fairly valid, but oftentimes in Pro League, the highest fraggers don't go for that. So the Acog does help with that, but again, it's not quite as good with tracking or anything like that. And so now I'm going to discuss why they took away Acog from a lot of the defenders. The initial reason they gave was simply because Jaeger was spawn beaking all the time and wasting people. But that's not really what I found to be the case, because a simple fact is when you're sitting in a window like that, I guess runouts he would better for, but most of the time the spawn peaks, runouts aren't a common occurrence anymore, except I guess on skyscraper, but your speed doesn't matter for that because you're confined to a balcony. Oftentimes one speeds are superior because rook, you literally put your armor down and you're not going to lose any utility, and you have a lot higher armor, meaning as long as they don't hit you in the head, you can stay out there and take more shots, and you have a higher RPM, which means you're more likely to hit that shot. So I thought that was a ridiculous reason to take away the ACOG from Jaeger. But the more and more I played, the easier I found it is to hold angles with the ACOG and to look into, peek somebody holding an angle with the ACOG. So oftentimes that's why they gave your on-site players like Doc has an ACOG, because it's good for him to be far back on site aiming for heads as opposed to your bandit or your Jaeger, because if they were able to do that, then literally they could just hold tight angles at a distance from anywhere on the map, which you still can do, but it's just a little bit more difficult. So that is one of the reasons why, and also because the ACOG, in my opinion, is the superior sight, it's better that the defenders have less access to that, because they already have an inherent advantage of the fact that they get to design the map. They get 45 extra seconds to do so, plus however long it takes for the attackers actually to get to the building, and they win on default. Like if you run out of time, defense wins. So they already have those advantages, and those advantages alone are why defending is easier and why defending has a higher win rate on most maps. So by them taking it away from many of the defenders and giving them to attackers, or putting them on like Goyo's semi-auto, really good but unreliable shotgun, is simply because the ACOG is a more well-rounded sight. So the point of the video is to get across that I find that the ACOG is the most well-rounded sight, because super close, you're right, it's not going to do so well, but you can hip fire up close fairly reliably simply by crouching. It vastly improves how your CQC accuracy is, and it tightens your hip fire. But also because it's a lot easier to look into those angles the defenders are also oftentimes holding, and you have better control of the engagement. When you're on defense, it's super easy to control where you want to be on the map because you designed it and you had extra time to get to where you need to go. You don't really have that on attack. You have to push into them. You have to go find them and take them out in order to win. So by doing that on offense, giving yourself the ACOG means that you want to keep yourself, you can win by fighting at a distance, because the defenders by default, their guns do less damage at range, and the attackers don't have that. And so the ACOG lets you better control where you are when where you want to pick a fight. So if you have that on the defense, they can take fights at close range simply by hip firing, like I said. Medium range, because ACOG is great at that, or long range, which ACOG is by far the best sight, I guess, except for sniper rifle classes, which is awesome now. So by that, it's easier once, like I said, to fight at any engagement with the ACOG. So that's why it is now confined to attackers. I do recommend running it on attack. Now, if you want to be consistent and only run the same sight, that is a totally valid thing to do. There are pro players that did that, and I did that for a year, but you are going to be at a disadvantage when you're trying to retake a site, or if you're trying to look into retake a site. Yeah, if you're retaking a site, I guess, on defense, basically, I don't know, your best bet is to get as close as possible. But if you're peeking into angles, or you're holding, even if you're holding angles, oftentimes I'll find that my cursor isn't exactly where it needs to be. I will miss with the Holo pre-aiming a spot simply because I can't be as zoomed in as possible. So the Acog is the better sight. In my opinion, the strongest case you have is simply the consistency option. But I would argue that even on defense, you have a better time controlling where you want the engagement to be. So if you're gonna run Holo on attack, play to that. Keep your distance. Maybe run the. I've started running the laser a lot more, and hip firing if people are close enough. On offense, that's what you should do. On defense, playing the Holo sight and getting as close as possible is the best way to do it. Overall, it's going to depend on where you position yourself in your gunfights, but I do recommend simply because it is the most sight. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and check out another one of these console case videos. And make sure you check out my live stream on Mixer. It's eLemonadeR_XYZ. I stream there whenever I'm not uploading, and I will get a more consistent schedule. Thanks so much.